Another interesting thing I have on my list is the Bible says that in the end times, knowledge will increase. Knowledge.
Long road trips. A company called TerraFusion may have the solution you're looking for. Phil LeBeau is back, starring in his own version of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang at CNBC headquarters. Phil?
Carl, how cool is this? They are unfolding the wings as we speak behind the TerraFusion Transition. This is the world's first flying car, and as the wings unfold, I'm going to get inside here and talk with the CEO of TerraFusion and the Chief Technical Officer, Carl Dietrich. And Carl, explain to me, this is both a car and a plane. This is not a gimmick.
No, that's exactly right. This is very real. This is an airplane that has the added capability, folding up its wings, driving down the road, and parking in a single-car garage. Runs on super unleaded gasoline, just like your car.
And as the wings unfold, let's you and I get out of here. We'll give some people some perspective here. We're talking about getting up to 450 miles of range. Am I correct? And so the 450 miles of range, and as we come around here, at the same time, you're looking at a car when it's actually on the road, 35 miles per gallon.
Yep, 35 miles per gallon.
Because it runs on straight unleaded fuel. This is not jet fuel that it's running on.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So you've got 100 of these ordered at $279,000 a piece. Paint a picture for these people who have ordered this already. Who's buying the Transition?
Most of them are pilots. Most of them know what it's like right now to fly an airplane today. But one of the things that we're really interested in, one of the reasons why we're here in New York City, is to learn about people who aren't pilots who might like the functionality of being able to fly up to 400 miles on their own schedule, park their plane in their garage, and have the sort of convenience and freedom of operating a vehicle like the Transition.
There are people who will look at this and they'll say, you know what? It's a quirky little gimmick, and there might be a few people out there who want this. But you believe that you're going to ramp up production over the next several years, and that it's a much bigger market than people are anticipating.
That's exactly right. People have tried this in the past, but nobody's made a vehicle like this that can literally convert from plane to car faster than you could call up a cab. And this is the first time you've really got that sort of freedom, flexibility, the ability to convert that fast.
You expect deliveries to start later this year, correct? Once you get full certification?
That's correct.
It's already certified by NHTSA as a road vehicle. You can drive it out on the road.
And we've driven this one on the road, actually.
What does it feel like both driving as well as flying?
Well, it's amazing. It drives just like a normal car. You've got a steering wheel, a gas pedal, and a brake pedal. And it flies like a normal airplane. A stick, rudder pedals, and a center console throttle. So it's very easy. It's all about lowering the barriers to entry for non-pilots.
And as you were flying this, it feels kind of like a Piper Cub?
Feels like a Piper Cub, a Cessna 150, just like a little airplane. And we're looking forward to sharing that experience with a bigger segment of the population.
A lot of people are looking at this and saying, sounds great. Sounds wonderful. But I know that when you first came up with this idea at MIT, were there people who said you're nuts?
Absolutely, absolutely. And there always are. But the thing that we were looking to do is address the four biggest obstacles to the more widespread use of general aviation. The weather sensitivity. You're not going to get stopped if you own a Transition. You can drive when the weather gets bad. The high cost of ownership. You can keep this plane at home in your hangar and you run it on super
$279 is a bargain in the world of general aviation.
Absolutely, yeah.
Carl Dietrich, the CEO and Chief Technical Officer, and I guess the man who dreamed up this idea of the first flying car with the TerraFusion Transition. Carl, they are taking deposits. $279,000 is what it costs. You can check it out down at the New York Auto Show this week. I know, even though you live in the city, you're thinking about finding some kind of airstrip somewhere.
My only question is whether or not... That's where to find more info. Phil, whether or not they have a lease option on this thing.
They would like to know, is there a lease option yet?
We are working on that right now, actually. Our Vice President of Sales is working on a lease.
And even though he's in general aviation, Carl, I'm teaching the world of autos. He just said to me, what will it take to get you in this flying car today?
Everything must go.
Absolutely.
Fascinating. Hey, innovation, Phil, that's what it's all about.
And today, knowledge has increased to the extent that, do you know, it will amaze you. You'll be surprised to know that, do you know that today, you don't have to be short anymore if you don't feel like being short. If you are short, you can make yourself tall. That's true. That's right. Yeah, you don't believe it. I'll prove it to you.
I want to be taller, and they're making it happen. Before the surgery, when I was 4 foot 11 and a half inches, people didn't take me seriously.
I realized that the world looked at me a certain way, but I didn't look at myself in that certain way. And, I wanted the way I felt about myself and the way the world felt about me to be similar.
25-year-old Akash Shukla and this 37-year-old man, who asked not to be identified, are part of a growing, no pun intended, but controversial trend in cosmetic surgery. Men who want and get their legs lengthened.
There are people that have said, accept what God gave you, but everybody is trying to alter what God gave them. If kids have crooked teeth, they'll get braces.
But this isn't exactly like straightening your teeth. Do you hear that? Bones are broken. If you break a bone, pull it apart very slowly, like a millimeter a day, the bone knows how to regenerate. It uses a state-of-the-art telescopic implantable rod. Once inserted into the middle of the broken bone, the rod actually expands and allows new bones to grow around it. This is hardly a fast process. It takes at least 3 months to complete, including demanding and excruciating physical therapy.
Pain will go away, but the height that you gain will stay with you for the rest of your life.
Akash Shukla is now thrilled to be nearly 5'2". But this guy, who went from 5'6" to 5'9", well, that wasn't enough for him. So last fall, he went back for more surgery to add another 5 inches.
I'll be 6'2" in 4 weeks. I'm still lengthening right now.
You're growing as we speak.
As we speak.
He actually traveled overseas for the surgery, as many Americans do, because leg lengthening might cost you about $85,000 with a Dr. Taylor, but you could pay less than half of that with a foreign doctor. But sometimes you get what you pay for. With these internal rods, the patient is the one who controls the lengthening, actually twisting their own legs to extend the rod inside. It makes a noise, so get ready to scream.
This is a quick forward. This is a quick back, as we said. It's much quieter. That was one click. I have to do 9 more of those today to do my 0.7 millimeters.
Worth all this money, all this pain?
Absolutely.
Good women?
My dating life has improved exponentially.
Because of those 4 inches.
6 inches so far.
Doctors treating the world's tallest man now say he has stopped growing. 29-year-old Sultan Kozan stands at a towering 8 feet 3 inches. Look at him. He suffers from a rare disorder affecting his pituitary gland, causing his body to produce an excessive amount of growth hormone. Now doctors say a new medical treatment may be saving his life. Trace has more. Trace?
Megan, you got to keep this in context here. There have been fewer than 10 people in the history of the world who have ever reached 8 feet tall. This guy, as you said, 8'3". That's 13 inches taller than Shaquille O'Neal. I mean, that's astounding. And as you said, a pituitary gland problem, that, by the way, is a gland about the size of a pea in your brain. Well, now, doctors at the University of Virginia, the medical center there, have now done successful laser surgery along with medication to shrink that tumor so that it does not keep producing growth hormone, because if he keeps growing, the doctors say, it could be very dangerous. Listen.
He had broken a bone that had led to an infection and or a blood clot forming, he could have died suddenly. So our hope is that by stopping him from growing, at least that we will prevent any further worsening of his of his overall health.
You saw the picture of him getting into the car. Well, he could barely get in a standard-sized car. The hospital was kind of the same way. They didn't have a helmet, a surgical helmet big enough to fit him, so they had to bring that in. No beds big enough for him. They had to bring that in. Couldn't even fit in the elevators, Megan. The doctors say if he kept growing, his skeleton simply cannot hold the weight, which is now 371 pounds.
Wow.
And in case you're wondering, he wears a size 28 shoe. That's like 4 Jimmy Choos in one for you, Meg. I mean, that's big.
Oh, my heart goes out to him. I mean, that's got to be very hard. I mean, just living that way, like you say, elevators and cars and things you wouldn't even think of. But I do want to tell you this, Trace. Our control room is telling me he's supposedly the tallest, but apparently there's a man in Czechoslovakia who may be even taller, but he refuses to be measured.
That's right. We did the research. You won't be, if you're not going to go to Guinness and get measured, then you can't be in the book.
No, you're out. You're out of the.
You know what? I'm trying to always do evidence-based prophecies. I just tell you what is the prophecy is and also what is really happening. Today, knowledge has increased to the extent that people can increase their height. If you don't feel like being short, you can become tall now. And people, just like people who don't like their teeth are going for braces and changing their tooth, or people who don't like to be fat are going to be slimmed. And there's so many technologies: iPod, iPad, computer chips, drones, and increase of some years. And do you know that just 1,000 years ago, if somebody told you that I can talk to somebody in another state, in another place, without seeing the person, they would think that you are superstitious or you are practicing witchcraft. Today, through phone, we can communicate. You can just be seeing somebody who is in another country, and you are also in another country. Knowledge has so much increase, and it's all part of the prophecies that when the end is close, knowledge will increase. Knowledge, it is all a sign that the coming of our Lord is coming, is very soon, and also very soon Jesus Christ is coming. Knowledge has increased to the extent that today they are developing even the chip to put under people's skin. Very soon, people, before you go to work, you have to be scanned. Do you understand? And that's why when the new world order begins to kick in and the man of peace, the Antichrist, comes in, it will be easy for them to put the identification mark on people. You can't buy or sell until you have it. That's the mark of the beast, 666. We are getting close. We are almost close to that technology.
We're an organisation that basically focuses on the human inventorying issue. We petition governments on a federal level to actually get preventative legislation introduced. We also covered emerging technologies such as nanotech, radio frequency ID, the global information grid, and the current threat that is actually facing humanity, which is transhumanism. And what transhumanism is the merger of man into machine. So it is a group of individuals that basically want to embrace technology to evolve mankind to the next stage. The best way to introduce VeriChip is actually with the advertisement that they actually started about a month ago on US TV. So to introduce the product, I think it's always best to use their propaganda, and here it is.
To think something so small can connect you to everything that matters.
When you're alive, and the way you live, I'm on the line. Health is always with you, when every second counts in the emergency room, providing immediate access to your medical records.
Because Rob has trouble remembering all his medications.
Because I'm in love with my kids' kids.
Because my car lost control while driving.
Because now I'm looking out for both of us. Because I have diabetes, but it doesn't have me. Because I spend my life in the ER trying to save you.
No, the mark of the 666 is on the palm of your hands. And so please, every time you are seeing this technological breakthroughs, remember that it is all part of fulfilling prophecies. Very soon, Jesus is coming soon. So get yourself prepared. Know him as your personal savior. In recent times too, we've been hearing more news and occurrences of sun flares, which they have the ability to also cause some of the satellites to be destroyed.
Right, Mike. Also new this morning, the sun spit out a large X5 class solar flare. Scientists are calling it one of the largest solar flares of the current solar cycle. Now, according to NASA, they can trigger planet-wide radio blackouts and long-lasting radiation storms. These flares are often accompanied by a phenomenon known as coronal mass ejections, also known as CME, which are essentially bursts of solar wind. The CME probably won't directly head for Earth, but rather produce a glancing blow, and that could happen later this weekend. So, Trent, what does all this mean?
Gibberish for most people. No,
for a lot of people. That's why we're sending it to you.
You know, there's 3 different classes of sun flares, and X is the most powerful, which was one that just, I guess, March 4th was when that one, a couple days ago, when it was released. That's not going to be a big impact on us, but the sun has been going through kind of a lull for the past couple weeks or couple months, I guess I should say. it does have the potential to pick up a little bit, and there's a specific area on the sun that NASA scientists are focusing on, and in our, I guess, orbit, we're looking to go right through that, so we could see more of these in the near future, but I mean, for the most part, it's not going to have a huge impact on us, maybe a little satellite interference.
But one thing I realized is that recently we've been hearing more about, last year, for instance, there was a big deal about Planet X, Nibiru, and all these things, asteroid hitting the Earth, and all these things. Of late, we've been hearing such news. I believe that there are signs taking place even in the air and in the atmosphere. Very soon, something is going to be happening to the heavenly bodies as we are getting ready to see the end of the world. So it is not surprising for you to be hearing strange news about sun flare and other planets coming close to our solar system, and all Nibiru and Planet X and all these things. Whenever you hear such things, just get yourself ready. Just get yourself ready. It's something I wanted you to know about. And people talking about UFO sighting. Today, some years back, when you hear about UFO, it was like only a few number of people were seeing it or believed in it, or it was like conspiracy theory. But today, UFO is believed by even people in government, the social media, everybody is talking about it. It means that very soon, people are going to tell you that, hey, we have seen some aliens and they are now reacting with people, and so that's how the order of the world is now, and all those things. As we are heading towards the new world order, be ready for all these things to be happening. Be ready for all these things. So I wanted you to also know about this solar flares which has been going on recently. During the end times, the solar bodies and the world will be going through a great deal of change. Today, people are hearing strange sounds, earthquakes, tornadoes.
So many incredible stories coming out now. ABC's Ryan Owens has those. He's live in Forney, Texas.
Good morning to you, George. We're about 25 miles east of Dallas, and take a look at this home. This place was basically brand new, less than a year old. Not only is that white pickup truck turned upside down, but as we cross their driveway here, look at the red car in there. That is all that's left. But as we keep saying, in all of this rubble, nobody lost their lives. It simply defies logic. As many as 15 tornadoes blew through the Dallas Metroplex, home to some 7 million people, and it appears no one is dead. More than 650 homes were damaged. Some lost their roofs, others were destroyed. But amid the rubble, there are remarkable stories of survival.
I thought it was just a little small dust storm. But then it joined up with another one and it got bigger and bigger.
Forney resident Shay Earl rode out the twister in a closet when the skies cleared and his family was okay. He emerged to help his neighbors.
And a lady was over here, she was over here crying, saying she couldn't find her daughter. And I seen her little baby, her little daughter, about 2 years old, crying. As I picked the stuff up and got the debris off the little baby.
Juan Alonso grabbed his pets and stayed inside this storage space in his home.
I started hearing things falling, and I just crawled in here as far as I could. And basically, this is how we work.
22-year-old Lindsay Enix was at work when the tornado struck. An agonizing drive to her family's home where her mom was caring for 3 children.
Just looking at the house, it looked like they were gone.
Emergency workers told her mom and son were alive.
She had one baby on one side, one baby on the other, and then my son under her. And she said she felt a big gush of wind come through real strong, and she said she just kept feeling it take him, and she just grabbed both of his feet and just hung on.
And a live look this morning at the symbol that was painted on what's left of this home. That symbol, of course, we've seen far too many times before. It usually means a mass disaster. They put the X there to say they've looked through this home and didn't find anyone. Fortunately, that has been the case in every single house they have looked through. George?
That is good news. Okay, Ryan, thanks very much. Katie's going to talk to the Enoch family in just a minute, but let's bring in Sam right now tracking all of this. And so unusual to see tornadoes like this so close to a major city, Sam.
Yeah, and George, wait till you see exactly how close it is. First, let's give you the scope of how wide the storm center was, all the way through the southeast, with most of the cluster in eastern Texas there. But when you look at it really closely, and you know that there's about 18 tornado reports, that means folks have said there's about 18 reported tornadoes. We believe that actually only 6 to 13, when they look at the damage, will actually have been on the ground at that point. But then the two giant tornadoes. Look at Arlington, Kennedale, Lancaster, Forney right there. Dallas is right here in the center. So you've got tornado going that way. You've got tornado moving around this way to Dallas. But also, let me show you, for the first time, you were able to stand in Dallas, look east and see a tornado, then stand in Dallas, turn around and look south and see a tornado. Two very large things. If you think about this, the center of population there, the folks that were involved, about 500,000 people, could have been 7 million people in the Dallas, Fort Worth, Arlington area involved in these tornadoes.
Tsunamis, flooding, bad weather. Last year, for instance, Texas, for instance, experienced one of the bad weather, for many years. They have never, their crops did not do well in the Horn of Africa, famine, and wherever you turn, we've been having extreme weathers. Extreme. Last year, for instance, during the summer, it was extremely hot. Extremely hot. Now we are having extreme weathers also. Very extreme. Everything is becoming very, very extreme. Let me tell you, even this year, from last year, December, September, October, November, December, I didn't experience any snow. And until now, January, we are now in March, still haven't really seen any snow fall this year. Extreme weathers, which wasn't so. By now, we should have, during December, Christmas, there should have been white snow, or even when you entered into the new year, January, February, we should have seen. Up to now, there's no snow. It's possible that we may not even experience it, and then we usher ourselves into the summer. So everything is becoming extreme weather changes.
So terrifying yesterday. Amazing that no one was killed.
I know, isn't it? There were 18 tornado reports, George, 6 to 13 reported on the ground, and 2 major tornadoes striking the area. And as you say, it is shocking that there were no deaths. Thank goodness.
Thank goodness. But the pictures are mind-boggling. Look at these right now. These tractor trailers we're going to show you. They look like Tonka trucks being thrown through the air right there, and then they piled up. There it is, right there, right after the massive twisters. They were just flying through the air and twirling.
And entire neighborhoods were torn up. We have the roof ripped off from a home. The entire bedroom looks intact with a flat screen TV still there. Another home there, 2x4s shooting through the walls like missiles. So much of the destruction caught on tape as it happened around 1 p.m. Dallas time.
Those were deadly weapons, but no one was killed.
We've got complete coverage of the storm and its aftermath from our extreme weather team. Sam here tracking the latest, and ABC's Ginger Z and Ryan Owens in the storm zone. Let's start with Ginger and all those amazing pictures caught on tape as the storm hit. Ginger, good morning.
Good morning, Katie. Amazing pictures here at the ground, too. Let me take you inside one of the more eerie post-tornado scenes I have ever been witness to. See the party streamers still hanging from the banisters, yet the kitchen and most of the home vacuumed away, as several tornadoes did this to so many hundreds of homes, inhaling parts of northeast Texas.
Oh, wow! Power flashes! Oh, my goodness! Get in the house!
The sudden explosive nature of this tornado.
Please take shelter immediately because we have a tornado right now.
It's a series of images that make you say, oh my, all caught on camera. News choppers capturing the moment this tornado starts raging with full force.
Look, these huge trailers, these huge rigs, the back ends of tractor trailers that are literally being picked up and thrown hundreds of yards.
Take a closer look. Keep in mind, these trucks weigh at least 12,000 pounds empty, here being tossed hundreds of feet into the air.
Look at all that stuff that just came up off the ground. Oh, it just destroyed something on the ground.
18 preliminary reports of tornadoes surrounding Dallas-Fort Worth. Some may have had winds up to 165 miles per hour, knocking out power to tens of thousands of homes, damaging hundreds of others.
It is coming toward us, y'all. Get in
the building.
With ominous clouds hovering above drivers as they manage to catch the eerie scene on video.
As you can see, I'm passing just big chunks of tree that's been uprooted. I see metal, corrugated steel, lots of emergency vehicles, so I'm sure there's lots of damage in the area.
At least 150 people in this community alone spent the night in a shelter. So there's some bad news, but of course you mentioned the best news, and I have to say it again, although there were several injuries, no one died in these storms.
It all shows that time is running out. I want you to know that these things are not just ordinary news. They are all pointers that we are heading towards the end of the world.
Last hour, we learned that the White House is moving ahead with new sanctions on Iranian oil to punish Tehran for its nuclear program. The president deciding that there is enough crude oil on the world markets to take this step without harming the U.S. or its allies. But this comes after explosive accusations that the White House leaked classified information to stop Israel from attacking Iran. Yesterday on our show, former Ambassador John Bolton called out the administration after reports surfaced that Israel had been granted access to airfields in Azerbaijan. That's along Iran's northern border. Let's listen.
I think that the pressure that the administration has put on Israel has been just merciless behind the scenes. But nonetheless, as I say, every evidence is that the pressure's failing, that the Israeli government will do what they think is necessary. So the Obama administration has torqued it up a notch, and now they're going to reveal very sensitive, very important information that will allow Iran to defeat an Israeli attack. I think that's what's going on.
So does this jeopardize our relationship with Israel? Let's ask Fox News national security analyst KT McFarland. KT, great to see you.
Good to be with you.
Do you agree with Ambassador Bolton and what he said yesterday that the U.S. is intentionally leaking this classified information to undermine Israel and get it to stop whatever plans it has to attack Iran?
Well, the administration doesn't want any kind of a problem in the Middle East before the election. They don't want an Israeli attack on Iranian sites because they think it'll lead to a regional war, draw the United States in. They don't want that kind of a situation because they think it'll lead to high oil prices, high gasoline prices. The way I think about it right now is it's like a foot race where everybody's racing. You've got Iran racing to get to the finish line of getting nukes as fast as they can. You have Israel racing to stop Iran from making those nukes. And you have the United States racing to stop Israel from stopping Iran.
I mean, of course the U.S. doesn't want to be drawn into another war.
Nobody wants
another war. That's
Even Israel
practical.
doesn't want another
Of course. I mean, that's logical. Is there any way for Iran to take whatever action it feels necessary without the U.S. getting dragged into something?
Well, the question is it one of time? You know, how much time does everybody have left? And I've got to tell you, the people who know aren't talking, and the people who are talking probably don't know. The question is, does Iran get to that finish line before the election? Does Israel realize that it only has a certain amount of time, so it's got to have some preemptive attack? Or, as President Obama is saying today, do we let sanctions work? There's enough time. Those sanctions are somehow going to get the Iranians to go to the negotiating table and give up their nukes. However, they have not up until this point.
But what about this other question of the U.S. possibly leaking classified information and compromising Israel if, in fact, nobody knew that there were air bases at Azerbaijan that were going to be made available? What does this do to the relationship with Israel?
I think the bigger problem this week was not so much the leaking of information about the Azerbaijan airfields that Israel might or might not use. You know, look, Israel's trying to hedge all of its bets. It's looking for friends. It's looking for military capabilities. It's looking for sabotaging the Iranian program. It's looking for assassinating potential Iranian scientists involved in that program. But to me, the bigger problem was that open mic. When President Obama leaned over to the Russian leader and said, don't worry, after the election, I'll have more flexibility. Now, these are the same Russian leaders who have just spent 6 months trashing the United States in their election campaign. If you're the country of Israel, and you're the Prime Minister of Israel, and you're listening to that, and you're hearing an American president saying, once I'm reelected, there'll be a different deal, you've got to wonder, hey, this is the guy who just said, I've got your back. Don't worry, we're not going to let Iran get nuclear weapons. You've got to wonder that after Obama is reelected, if he is, can Israel count on his word?
I see, because it makes it seem as though the president is disingenuous.
To everybody. You have to wonder, where's the truth here? And if Obama's saying to Israel, wait till after the election, whatever you do, wait till after the election, you got to wonder if after the election, is he still your friend?
Let's talk about what he announced today in terms of the sanctions on these foreign financial institutions that do business with Iran. What impact will that have, do you think?
There are a couple of things going on with these sanctions. We've had sanctions for years with Iran. They haven't stopped Iran's behavior. We're now into a new phase of sanctions, and these are basically targeting the Iranian banking system. And it's like think of it as putting like a great big embargo around Iranian oil, but you're using banks instead of battleships. What's the objective? What are you trying to do with these sanctions? Well, one idea, the administration says that the Iranians will realize that they've got to go to the negotiating table and negotiate away their nukes. I think that's naive. The closer Iran gets to those nukes, they're going to race to that finish. The other objective might be to say to the Iranians, to the Iranian people, things are so bad, you should go out into the streets again, topple your regime the way the Egyptians did, the way the Syrians are trying to do, the way the Libyans have done, the way the Moroccans have done, and then maybe Iran under different leadership has a different plan.
Well, yes, except that Iran tried that. The Iranians tried that, and we didn't necessarily have their backs.
Totally. We snuffed them. I mean, that was, in fact, I think, the beginning of the Arab Spring when the Iranian people went to the streets in 2009. The question will be now for this administration, if the Iranian people go to the streets again, and I'm not saying they will, but if they were, would this president then welcome them the same way that he welcomed the Egyptians who went to the streets?
So do you think that's the answer? To foment an uprising there?
They're lousy options. We either bomb Iran, let Iran get the bomb. Those are two losers. One is a regional war, one is a nuclear Iran. Is there a third option? Is there an option C? I think it's a long shot, but I would go for option C, try to crash their economy using the oil weapon.
All right, KT McFarland, thanks so much. Always great to have your expertise. Now on that new report coming in saying that the U.S. thinks that Azerbaijan has recently granted Israel access to air bases along its border with Iran. If true, that means the Israelis could strike Iran's nuclear facilities without having to refuel, and that is a big change in Israel's military situation. John Bolton is the former U.S. ambassador to the UN and a Fox News contributor. Hello, Mr. Ambassador.
Hi, Allison. Glad to be here.
So if these new reports are correct, that Israel is now being granted access to Azerbaijan, what does this mean?
Well, I'd say two things. One, substantively, obviously Israel can do the math and the geography, and if it can get positions closer to Iran's nuclear targets to be able to attack them, that's so much the better from Israel's point of view. Israel knows how difficult preemptive military attack would be, and it's not surprising if these reports are true, and I'm not commenting one way or the other whether they are. But I think there's another point here beneath the substantive point, and that is that these reports come from American intelligence officials. Now, if you think back a month or so ago, Defense Secretary Panetta said publicly that he thought if Israel attacked Iran, it would be in the April, May, June period. And I think the reason he did that was that the Obama administration's private effort to pressure Israel not to attack Iran were failing, and they had decided to go public. I think this leak today is part of the administration's campaign against an Israeli attack.
Yeah, in fact, you're not alone. There are reports today in Israel News that, in fact, the U.S. is leaking this classified information in order to dissuade Israel. So why is the U.S. doing that?
I think the Obama administration has long believed that an Israeli attack was worse than an Iranian nuclear weapon. The president says that containment and deterrence of Iran is not his policy, and I think today that's true. But it's his plan B. It's his backup plan when his current efforts at sanctions fail and diplomacy fails and Iran gets nuclear weapons. And I think that the pressure that the administration has put on Israel has been just merciless behind the scenes. But nonetheless, as I say, every evidence is that the pressure's failing, that the Israeli government will do what they think is necessary. So the Obama administration has torqued it up a notch, and now they're going to reveal very sensitive, very important information that will allow Iran to defeat an Israeli attack. I think that's what's going on.
So if Israel does take advantage of these Azerbaijani airstrips or places that they can launch from, what does that mean for the U.S.?
Well, I'm not saying I have any knowledge about anything in Azerbaijan, but what it means is that the likelihood of an Israeli attack would be more successful because the distances are shorter. They can have their planes over the target for longer periods of time. They have to worry less about aerial refueling. There are a whole host of reasons why being able to attack from closer in positions makes sense. So releasing this information so that the Iranians now know about it takes away a potentially very powerful mode of attack that hitherto the Israelis had been able to keep secret.
Former Ambassador John Bolton, thanks so much for your expertise.
drank a lot and partied a lot, and I was moved to Tucson, Arizona, and I was working at a construction site, and one of the guys brought some water from Mexico that was contaminated, and I ended up drinking it by accident. Got real sick, contracted cholera, and within about 72 hours I was flat on my back and basically dehydrated. That's when I passed away. I noticed that when I passed on, that of course I wear glasses and I'm very nearsighted. I noticed that, first thing I noticed is that I wasn't wearing my glasses and I could see clearly across the room. And when I turned my head, I noticed that my body wasn't moving. And I was lifted right out of my body and hovered over my body, looking down at myself and looking around. And next thing I knew, I went through the ceiling of the room I was in, and I was transported into a very, very, very black, dark void. I could hear like somebody speaking to me, like telepathy. And it was explaining to me many, many things that I no longer remember, but most of the idea was explaining to you the whys of life, why there was evil in the world, why this, why, people have questions all the time. These were being answered to you as you were being transported to this light. And time you got to where the light was, you knew what happened, you know what's going on. You know what happened. You know you died. You know you're going to be judged. And everything as you're traveling, it's made so clear to you that what's happening is perfectly just and right. Well, I was going through the darkness and was approaching the light there. This one vortex was spinning, and a lady that had just died in a car wreck came through, and she was deposited right there. And I saw her as she arrived, and inside her cube, she saw it as the illusion of her grandmother's farm, that her grandparents' farm that she loved so well as when she was growing up. And her grandmother recently passed away too, so she got in this cube, and immediately she thought she was in heaven because there was her grandmother waiting there welcoming her. The grandmother that was actually a demon that gave the illusion of being the grandmother said, "Dear Pudding, you made it to heaven. I'm so glad you're here." And she really thought that she was in paradise. But there was a darker side to her. She would make her children be what she wanted. Her children wanted something else. She wanted them to be this. And if they didn't do it her way, it was the fist. It was verbal abuse. It was cutting down. So as she sat down, I was watching it, and the tree's limbs just grabbed her. And then she realized she was not in paradise. And as we passed some cubes, there were people inside, and they were trapped in flames. And it was like their skin was still intact, but they were burning. And there was an individual, and he was playing pool. And this guy was a child serial killer, but he lived in the 1940s. And he was in this pool hall playing this pool before the punishments would commence again. He thought he had a break. And then these people in there would torment him and come and run and just grab him and tear him up. And out of the sky, I could see this big demon coming down. It reminded me of a snake. He just gobbled him and swallowed him. Then all the other little demons came up and said, "That's no fair. We didn't have our chance with him yet." He regurgitated him back up. He was whole. I know this sounds really bizarre, but that's what happened. Then all the other little demons, little teeny things, about 3 foot tall, just jumped on him. And he was powerless. And they were beating and clawing, and there was no rest for this guy whatsoever after that. It was constant torment. Everything that he ever done was being justly put back to him. Came to a cube. I was looking at this, and this was a woman. She was dressed in fine garb. She was a temple prostitute, basically what it was. And she was somebody who died in Corinth around 69 AD. For a price, she would have a newborn son. For some reason, their religion was some strange thing. When you have a newborn son, you can offer it into a statue, and there's flames underneath the statue. You put the baby on the statue, and basically the baby would be cooked. And here she is in this temple. There was no let up to her torment. It was almost like all the little babies that she burned that were hers and other people's were tormenting her, mocking her, pouncing on her, just crawling and tearing her up. And she just screamed, and I had to turn away and walk. There's an individual that she practiced the black dark craft. She was a witch. I just knew that she was a witch, but she died many hundreds of years ago. But she was trapped in a coffin, scratching, trying to get out. She couldn't get out. She was in that position for years and years and years and years, hundreds of years. And then finally, when she got it open, all the demons would pounce on her. And we walked on to another cube. We looked in this other cube on this row, and there was another lady. And she believed that Mother Earth could save her. And then if she honored the trees and the rocks, and she was into this nature thing, and part of their religious practice that she would practice would be getting out in the fields and dancing around a fire with a bunch of other people doing the same. The people that she thought that she was with were actually demons, and they would come up to her and say, "You did this." They pick up a stone. You say, "The stone will save you here," and they smacked her with it. So she was standing there, and the demons reached down there and reached in her mouth, ripped out her tongue, and part of her thing says, "You talk bad? Oh, the stones are not going to save you. Nobody can save you." Then they ripped off her, just actually took her skin and just peeled it off. It was really slow and agonizing to shreds. It done nothing to the skeletons. Then they took the bones and broke the bones. And she felt everything. And then her body would come back together. The flesh would come back together. And she'd be whole again. And it would start all over again. A different scene would happen. And some of the cruelest people on earth were in these. You know, some people, I don't like to say names of people or anything like that, but I will, you know, this one particular individual is definitely there, and everybody knows who it is. It's Adolf Hitler.